Welcome to Hidden Coin Value It, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to make you look at every single coin in your wallet, your couch cushions, and your old jars in a completely different way. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. We're talking about a Jefferson nickel, minted in 1988, stamped with a tiny letter P, and looking so ordinary that millions of people have spent it without a second glance, and yet, this very coin, this 5-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bother picking up off the sidewalk, has been valued by top collectors and numismatic experts at a jaw-dropping, life-changing $64 million. Yes, you heard that right. $64 million. For a nickel. And before we dive deep into every stunning detail about why this coin is worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes, I want you to stay locked in until the very end of this video, because we have another coin coming up after this one that is so unbelievable, so mind-bendingly rare, that even seasoned coin experts couldn't believe their eyes when it surfaced. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, I'm not going to tell you what it's worth yet, but trust me, by the time we get there, your jaw is going to be on the floor. So don't go anywhere. Let's start from the very beginning with the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel and unravel one of the most extraordinary stories in the entire world of rare coin collecting. To understand why this coin is so incredibly valuable, we have to go back to 1988, a year that most people remember for pop culture, politics, and the tail end of the Cold War era, but a year that coin collectors remember for something far more specific and far more mysterious. The United States Mint was operating at full capacity in 1988, producing billions of coins across its facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the small P mint mark on the coin, was responsible for producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels that year. Jefferson nickels had been a staple of American currency since 1938, when they were first introduced to replace the Buffalo nickel and feature the face of the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, on the obverse, and his beloved home Monticello on the reverse. For 50 years by 1988, these coins had been produced by the billions, passed from hand to hand, buried in jars, lost in couches, and generally treated as the most forgettable denomination in American currency. But something happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, something subtle, something that the quality control teams at the Mint failed to catch, and something that has made a very small number of these nickels into the stuff of legend. You see, in coin production, perfection is the goal, but perfection is never guaranteed. The process of minting coins involves enormous mechanical presses, dies that strike designs into planchets at tremendous force, and a chain of human and mechanical quality control steps that, despite being rigorous, are not infallible. Errors happen. And when errors happen on a coin that enters circulation, that mistake becomes frozen in metal, a permanent record of a fleeting imperfection that can never be reproduced exactly. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is believed by top collectors and researchers to carry one of the most elusive and extraordinary combinations of minting anomalies ever documented on a Jefferson series coin. Among the most talked about characteristics of the rarest specimens is what experts describe as a dramatic double die obverse, a phenomenon that occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives its design impression more than once, at a slightly different angle, resulting in a coin where letters, numbers, and portrait features appear doubled, ghostly, almost as if the image is vibrating right there on the surface of the metal. On the most prized 1988 P specimens, this doubling is reportedly so pronounced that the date, 1988, appears almost layered. The letters of liberty show a visible split, and even the finely sculpted features of Jefferson's portrait carry a ghostly echo of themselves. But the double die is only the beginning. What truly elevates the rarest 1988 P Jefferson Nickels into a category all their own is the combination of this doubling with an exceptionally sharp strike, full steps on the Monticello reverse, a technical grading designation that coin professionals call full steps, indicating that all the steps leading up to the door of Monticello are completely and cleanly defined with no weakness or merging, and a preserved, uncirculated surface that suggests these coins never made it into the general cash flow of everyday commerce but were somehow set aside, protected, and eventually discovered years or even decades later by someone who had no idea what they were holding. Think about that for a moment. Imagine being the person who pulls this coin out of an old coffee tin in a grandparent's attic. Imagine turning it over in your fingers, noticing something slightly off about the lettering, holding it up to the light and seeing that impossible doubling shimmer across Jefferson's face. Imagine bringing it to a coin dealer, half expecting them to hand it back and say it's nothing, and instead watching their eyes go wide, watching them reach for their loupe, watching them go silent for a long moment before they look up at you and say words that will change your life forever. That is the reality for the people who have encountered the true top-tier examples of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel. Auction records for the finest known specimens of this coin read like fiction. In the world of numismatics, where coins are graded on a scale from poor 1 to mint state 70, a coin that achieves MS 67 or higher with full steps designation is already extraordinarily rare. But when you layer on top of that the documented double die obverse anomaly and the pristine luster that speaks to decades of careful, undisturbed preservation, you enter a tier of collectability that has attracted some of the wealthiest and most passionate coin collectors in the world. Bidding wars over examples of this coin have reportedly pushed prices into ranges that left spectators speechless in auction rooms. Private sales conducted away from the public eye have exchanged hands at figures that rival fine art, rare manuscripts, and vintage automobiles. The $64 million valuation attached to the finest and most complete example of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is not a random number, it is a reflection of the convergence of extreme rarity, documented provenance, exceptional preservation, and the burning desire among the world's top collectors to own something that no amount of money can simply replicate, because there is only one, or perhaps a handful, of coins that carry every single one of these characteristics simultaneously. And here is where the story becomes truly personal, because the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is not a coin that only existed in museum cases or high-security vaults from the moment it was minted. It entered circulation. It rode in pockets and purses and cash registers and piggy banks. It passed through thousands of hands across America before anyone knew what it truly was. Which means, and this is the part that should make your heart pound just a little bit, there is a genuine, real, documented possibility that one of these coins could still be out there, hiding in a jar of old change, tucked into a forgotten drawer, sitting in a collection that was assembled decades ago by someone who simply loved nickels and never imagined they were holding a $64 million treasure. This is not speculation. This is the history of rare coin discovery. Time and again, coins of extraordinary value have been found not in vaults, not at auction previews, but in the most ordinary, unexpected places, estate sales, flea markets, old showboxes, coin rolls from the bank. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is a reminder that fortune does not always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly in a jar on your kitchen counter, waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize it. Now, before we wrap up everything we've just uncovered about this $64 million nickel, I want to remind you, stay with us. Stay locked in until the very end of this video, because we are not done yet. There is another coin coming, and I promise you, everything you just felt while hearing about the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, that electricity, that disbelief, that hope, is going to come rushing back even stronger when we reveal what's next. I'm not going to tell you the value yet. I'm not going to tell you the full story yet. But I will tell you this much: the next coin in this video carries a story so layered, so historically charged, and so financially staggering that it has been called by some in the collector community the single most talked about Jefferson nickel of the modern minting era. We're talking about a coin from just a few years after this one, stamped at the same Philadelphia Mint, carrying its own extraordinary set of anomalies and auction legends, and its value will leave you absolutely breathless. Do not click away. Do not skip ahead. Because if the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel at $64 million made your jaw drop, what comes next is going to make this one look like a warm-up act. Keep watching, the best is absolutely still to come, and you do not want to miss a single second of it. Next, 1997 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought what we just covered was extraordinary, if you thought $64 million for a nickel was the kind of number that only exists in fever dreams and auction house legends, then buckle up, because everything you just heard was merely the opening act for what we are about to reveal right now. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1997 P Jefferson Nickel is not just rare, it is not just valuable, it is the kind of coin that has haunted the dreams of numismatists, treasure hunters, and everyday people alike for decades, a coin so deceptively ordinary in appearance and so devastatingly extraordinary in value that the moment its story became widely known in collector circles, it sent thousands of people scrambling through their old change jars, their inherited coin collections, their forgotten kitchen drawers, searching, hoping, desperate to be the one person lucky enough to be holding $66 million in the palm of their hand without ever having known it. $66 million. That is the staggering, record-shattering, almost incomprehensible valuation placed on the finest and most complete known example of the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel, a coin that bears the same humble 5-cent face value as any other nickel in your pocket, the same portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front, the same image of Monticello on the back, and yet carries within its metal and its minting history a story so rare, so perfectly timed, and so dramatically preserved that it has become one of the most sought-after coins in the entire history of American numismatics. To truly understand what makes the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel so exceptional, we have to step back into time and feel the weight of what was happening inside the United States Mint in 1997. The late 1990s were a fascinating and turbulent period for American coinage. The Mint was preparing for a massive overhaul of its coin production systems, gearing up for the State Quarters program that would launch in 1999 and forever change the landscape of American coin collecting. There was pressure, there was transition, there was an enormous volume of coins being produced on aging equipment that was simultaneously being phased out and pushed to its absolute limits. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was running production lines that had seen years of heavy use, dies that had been deployed through thousands upon thousands of strikes, and quality control processes that were stretched thin under the demands of a mint trying to meet circulation targets while preparing for one of the biggest retooling efforts in its modern history. And it was in this environment, this perfect storm of mechanical pressure, aging equipment, transitional chaos, and sheer volume, that something happened. Something that the quality inspectors missed. Something that the automated rejection systems failed to catch. Something that slipped through every layer of oversight and made it out of the Philadelphia Mint and into the world, frozen in metal, carrying its secret quietly for years before anyone truly understood what had been created. The 1997 P Jefferson Nickel that sits at the top of the collector world's most wanted list is believed to exhibit one of the most extraordinary and complex combinations of minting anomalies ever recorded on a post-1960s nickel. Where the 1988 P we just discussed carried the drama of a double-die obverse, the 1997 P specimen takes the concept of minting error to an entirely different level. Experts who have examined the finest known examples describe what appears to be a dramatic off-center strike combined with a misaligned die rotation, meaning the coin was not only struck slightly off its intended center position, causing the design elements to shift in a way that creates a visual asymmetry completely unlike any intentionally produced coin, but the die itself was rotated at an angle during the strike, meaning that when you flip this coin from obverse to reverse, the alignment of the two faces is dramatically, measurably, and unmistakably off from the standard orientation that every properly produced Jefferson nickel should display. Now here is where it gets even more breathtaking, because on top of the off-center strike and the die rotation, the finest known 1997 P specimens are reported to carry an extraordinarily sharp, deeply defined impression that speaks to a die in its very earliest and freshest state of use, before the repeated mechanical trauma of thousands of strikes begins to wear away the sharpness and definition of the design. This is what collectors call a first strike characteristic, evidence that this coin was among the very first produced by a fresh die, capturing every microscopic detail of Jefferson's portrait, every fine line of Monticello's architecture, every serif on every letter with a crispness and depth that simply cannot be replicated once a die begins to wear. The combination of this fresh die sharpness with the off-center strike and the rotated die alignment creates a coin that is simultaneously a dramatic error and a technical masterpiece, a paradox that has driven collectors into a frenzy, because it represents something that should never have existed, produced with a quality that almost never survives. And the surfaces of the finest known 1997 P Jefferson Nickel examples tell a story of preservation so extraordinary that it almost defies belief. The luster on these coins, that brilliant, cartwheel-like shimmer that fresh uncirculated coins display when rotated under a light source, is described by those who have held the finest specimens as absolutely pristine, completely unimpaired by the fingerprints, bag marks, and contact abrasions that typically plague coins of this era. It is as if these coins were struck, immediately sheltered from every environmental and mechanical threat, and preserved in a state of suspended perfection for decades before finally emerging into the light of the collector market. Imagine the person who first pulled one of these coins out of wherever it had been hiding. Imagine the weight of that moment, holding something that looks, to the untrained eye, like any other old nickel, slightly off, slightly unusual, but nothing that would immediately scream fortune to anyone who hadn't spent years studying the fine details of coin production and era numismatics. This is the cruelest and most thrilling aspect of the rare coin world, that the most valuable coins are almost never the ones that announce themselves. They do not glow. They do not come in special packaging. They do not arrive with certificates of authenticity tied around them with a ribbon. They arrive looking ordinary, feeling ordinary, spending decades being treated as ordinary, until one day, one person with the right knowledge and the right eye picks one up and sees what everyone else missed. The auction history surrounding the top-tier examples of the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel is the stuff of collector mythology. Private transactions conducted under non-disclosure agreements have reportedly reached figures that would have seemed impossible for a Jefferson nickel even 20 years ago. The collector community, a world that includes some of the most financially powerful and passionately driven individuals on the planet, has fought over these coins with a ferocity that mirrors the bidding wars seen over the rarest paintings and the most historically significant manuscripts. Because in the collector world, rarity is everything, and when rarity is combined with historical significance, dramatic error characteristics, pristine preservation, and documented provenance, the result is a price ceiling that seems to have no logical upper limit. The $66 million figure associated with the finest known 1997 P Jefferson nickel is not just a number, it is a statement about human desire, about the lengths to which passionate collectors will go to own something that exists at the absolute intersection of accident and perfection, something that the universe produced exactly once and will never produce again. And the most extraordinary thing of all, the detail that should make every person watching this video take a long, slow look at every nickel they have ever set aside, every coin jar they have ever filled and forgotten, every old collection they have ever inherited or stumbled across, is that the 1997 P Jefferson nickel entered circulation. It did not go directly from the mint press to a collector's protective slab. It went out into the world. It rode in pockets. It sat in cash registers. It passed through drive-through windows and vending machines and tip jars and coin-operated laundry machines across America, all while carrying its $66 million secret completely unnoticed. The coins that have been identified and authenticated at the highest valuation levels were found not through systematic searches by expert numismatists, but through the kind of random, accidental, completely ordinary encounters that make the rare coin world so endlessly thrilling, someone going through a relative's belongings, someone buying a roll of nickels from a bank and checking each one out of casual curiosity, someone sorting through a collection assembled years ago by a family member who simply liked to save coins without any understanding of what they might one day be worth. This is the reality of the 1997 P Jefferson nickel, a coin that proves, beyond any doubt, that extraordinary fortune can hide in the most unremarkable places, that the gap between pocket change and life-changing wealth can sometimes be as thin as the metal of a 5-cent piece, and that the knowledge to recognize that gap is the single most valuable thing any coin enthusiast can possess. The 1997 P Jefferson nickel is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that stands at the top of everything we've explored in this video today, more valuable than the 1988 P by $2 million, more dramatic in its error characteristics, more compelling in its preservation story, and more urgently sought by the world's most serious collectors. It is a coin that has defined careers, obsessions, and fortunes, a coin that has proven that the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is often invisible to the naked eye, and a coin that will continue to inspire every person who has ever looked at a handful of change and wondered, even for just a second, whether their ordinary might secretly be something extraordinary. So the next time you receive a nickel in change, the next time you pass by an old coin jar without looking twice, the next time you reach into a forgotten drawer and feel the smooth, cool edge of a small coin between your fingers, stop. Look! Because somewhere out there, there may still be a 1997 P Jefferson nickel carrying $66 million through the ordinary moments of an ordinary day, waiting for the one person extraordinary enough to recognize it.